Welcome to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. I'm Melissa Joy, a certified financial planner and the founder of Pearl Planning. My goal is to help you streamline and organize your finances, navigate big money decisions with confidence, and be strategic in order to grow your wealth. As a woman, you work hard for your money, and I'm here to help you make the most of it. Now, let's get into the show. Welcome back to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking all about credit counseling, what to do when you have more debt than you can really work out and deal it with yourself. And I'm so pleased to have an expert in this field joining us for this discussion. Our guest, Bruce McClary, is the lead spokesperson for the National Foundation for Credit Counseling, which is the nation's largest network of nonprofit credit counseling organizations. Bruce has a background which includes work as a debt collector, a lender, and a former NFCC credit counselor himself. And he leverages that knowledge and extensive history working with consumers who have debt to provide expertise on podcasts like this and elsewhere. So Bruce, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Melissa. Thanks for having me with you.
Well, I know that for so many people, one of the most important parts of their personal finance journey is conquering debt, dealing with it. And, even when you've got debt under control, it can pop back up due to unexpected events or, just a series of, sometimes it's planned too. Give me a little bit of lay of the land of what you see with your foundation in terms of, kind of the state of affairs with Americans and their debt today.
Yeah, a lot of people are struggling right now. And when we look at how people are managing their finances, and debt is a big part of that, we're seeing that people are feeling a tremendous squeeze right now. There's a lot of financial pressure. There's an affordability crisis right now for a lot of people where they might have had enough room in their budget 5 or 6 years ago to cover some of the necessities, but now there's less available money in their budget to cover those necessities. And so people are turning to debt to fill that gap in their budget. And they're leaning on debt in a way to help them survive. So survival debt is a big issue. And people are carrying balances from month to month right now, more so than they have in the past. And the cost of carrying that debt is higher right now than it was, say, a decade ago or 2 decades ago. Average interest rates on credit cards right now are roughly 23%, 22%. Which is extraordinarily high. And if you're carrying money from month to month, it means that more of your money is going to pay the interest. It's really hard to chip away at the principal balance. And then there's the issue of people running out of room. If you're gap filling your budget and you're in this cycle of survival debt, the wall comes eventually because you run out of room to charge. And if you're carrying the balance month to month and you're not effectively able to pay it off. And so we're seeing more Americans hit that wall right now and run out of room to charge. And that's when things really get serious.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are in that situation. And one of the interesting things that we found about those who are entering into a debt crisis is that more people in the upper middle income category, those who are higher wage earners, people making $60,000 a year, $70,000 a year, even $80,000 a year, are finding themselves running into trouble, and they're reaching out for help because their credit card debt and other expenses have become unmanageable.
And I mean, I've seen it. It's not. I've seen it in families making $200,000 a year or even more. It's not just. There's no means testing for having debt issues, and so I know for some of our listeners out there, they may say, this is the episode for me, unfortunately. So we're really going to make a goal of, first of all, just normalizing that, dealing with debt issues is something that for many of us, at least for a portion of our life, is something that is just a fact of life. And so I guess I would start with just like mindset. And I know it can feel like such a shameful topic, but just helping people hear that you and I both know as financial experts that, just the average American finds themselves in circumstances where they carry debt that can be difficult to deal with, and that's there's no judgment in this conversation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's a good place to start, the judgment-free zone, because
Mm-hmm.
in my experience as a credit counselor, as an NFCC certified credit counselor years ago, right on the front lines of this, that's how we would approach these conversations. I'm not here to judge an individual for the decisions they made as their debt crisis grew. I'm here to help them out of a jam, and I'm here to give them all the support they need to make that possible and to achieve their financial goals and get past the crisis point. So, we can spend hours beating ourselves up for all the bad financial decisions we've made, but it doesn't do anything to solve the problem in front of us. So I think it's a good mindset to be in if you're struggling with debt, and if the shame is keeping you from reaching out. Just know that there are people who are ready to help, that are not going to judge you if you need to reach out and get help.
Mm-hmm.
And that the first step in doing that is to stop beating up on yourself, to stop criticizing the decisions you've made, to stop second guessing some of the things that you've done that might have either not helped your situation or made it worse. Because now's the time to take a step back, look at your situation, and try to find solutions instead of focusing on the problems. It's a tough step to take because
Yeah.
there is it's a tremendous amount of shame and embarrassment in these situations, and unfortunately, because that prevents people from reaching out for help. If you don't reach out and get help, or if you don't take action on your own to turn the situation around,
Mm-hmm.
not doing anything can make these situations much harder to resolve down the road.
Right. That interest compounding at, much higher rates than a typical mortgage would be or something like that can really
Yeah.
mean that it can quickly escalate. I guess we could if we pause for a moment, when you think about the work of a credit counselor, can you talk through the types of debts that we are associated with the work? So
Mhm.
there's all types of debt, and let's just like make a laundry list of what we're talking about so we can get a lay of the land.
Yeah, sure. And again, in the world of nonprofit credit counseling,
Mm-hmm.
I think the first thing to understand is that when you reach out and you talk to a credit counselor, and if you do it by reaching out to an NFCC certified credit counselor, the initial review is free. So your time with that counselor is free, and it gives you an opportunity to go through a full review of your financial situation, your budget, your income, the debt that you owe, the biggest challenges you have in front of you, what is at the crisis point, what deserves immediate attention, and then they can help you put together an action plan. And
Mm-hmm.
they'll look at all of your debt, your entire financial situation, so your student loans, your mortgage, all sources of income, any debts that are in
Unpaid bills.
collection,
Yeah.
unpaid bills, yeah, all of that. So that's part of that review. So that's completely free of charge. These are nonprofit organizations that are part of the NFCC. So that's one thing you can take advantage of there. But if you need to take an extra step and you need something that's more directly prescriptive, and you need a structured repayment program, then we're talking about specific types of debts that can be enrolled in these programs that help
Mm-hmm.
you repay your debt affordably, reduce interest rates, uh, stop the late fees and over limit fees and the collection calls, and ultimately get you out of debt in about 3 to 4, sometimes 5 years.
Okay.
But the debts that you can enroll in those programs are unsecured debts. So
Okay.
those are debts that are not collateralized. And most commonly, people associate that category with credit cards because
Mm-hmm.
credit cards are not collateralized debt. So your credit card debt, signature loans, if you have signature loans with a finance company or a bank or credit union, if there's no
Are
collateral in
those
those loans,
sometimes called like personal loans or
yeah,
okay.
personal loans. So those non-collateralized types of financing can go into these debt management plans, these DMPs, as they're often called. And then you can benefit from the reduced payments, reduced interest, the elimination of late and over limit fees. And for your credit cards, the major creditors will re-age your account upon enrollment, which means if you're 2 or 3 months past due, as soon as they accept the plan, the repayment plan, once you make that first payment, they'll adjust the account automatically back up to date. So instead of having to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get your account back into paid as agreed status, that happens at that point where they accept the plan. So there are a lot of benefits there that help people get over the hump, because if you think about it, all the late fees, the penalties, the high interest rate are working against people who are past due, just preventing them from getting back up to date. So that barrier is eliminated upon enrollment. And then people generally finish these plans in, as I mentioned, about 3 to 5 years, depending on the amount of debt enrolled.
Okay. And so maybe we can go into the structure of the nonprofit oriented credit counselors. So first of all, you mentioned already initial call, an initial consult is free of charge. But then there are also there are plans that you can do for a more formalized commitment to basically restructuring so that you can get on top of things with counseling. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So when you make your initial contact with a nonprofit credit counseling agency and you go into the counseling session, you go through that initial assessment, the conversation about the debt you owe, the income you make, your overall financial situation, and you're given an action plan. And in many cases, that action plan gives you options where you can take a DIY approach if you want. Or you can enroll in a debt management plan if your situation might need a little bit more direct assistance in structure.
Got it. And there are economics involved with the nonprofit credit counselors. How are they compensated for? How is their organizations compensated for providing this assistance?
Yeah, the benefit of working with a nonprofit is that there's the organization receives funding contributions to offset the cost of services to the consumer. So there's the major creditors, the banks, others who have an interest in financial well-being will contribute to nonprofit credit counseling agencies and associations to help them provide these services at low or no cost to consumers. And where there are fees that are charged to consumers, they're significantly reduced because they're offset by those contributions from creditors and others who are supporting the mission of these nonprofits. But there may still be fees that are charged to consumers. And when you're enrolled in the structured repayment plan, that's more typically where those fees will show up. And there's usually an enrollment fee that averages somewhere between $25 to $50 one-time charge to activate the program. And then there can be fees, monthly fees, in a similar range that are for administering the program month to month. But those fees are more than offset by the payment reductions, the interest rate reductions, and the elimination of late and over limit fees over the course of repayment.
Got it. What do you see then for the people that are successful in these types of programs? Can you give me, just anecdotal stories of the impact that having the opportunity for a program like this may have?
Yeah, there's so many stories that I can draw from that really illustrate the significant life-changing impact of these programs. And I think you'll find, and a lot of those you'll find on our YouTube page. If you go to the NFCC, nfcc.org, you click on the YouTube icon, you can go there and you can hear some of the stories directly from the people who were helped that talk about some of the ways that their lives have changed because of being enrolled in the program. But I would say that, a couple of typical scenarios are where people are drowning in credit card debt. They're getting collection calls because they're already a payment or two past due. The debt collectors are increasing pressure on individuals to pay up and get caught up to date, but the money just isn't there, and so late fees, over limit fees start to pile up, and they reach out. They stop that process that could have gone to another level if the accounts continue to go unpaid. The accounts will charge off, and then creditors can sue you for the money that you owe. They'll shut the account down. It damages your credit. And instead of ending up in that situation, 3 to 5 years later, they're completely debt free. And they have all of this money that they were paying to their creditors that they can now pay themselves and invest and put in savings or use towards achieving some kind of a life goal that they had. So a lot of the people that I helped directly were renters when they entered the program, but they were homeowners when they exited the program because their situation turned around so much. Their credit improved significantly. Their financial stability improved. They were able to set aside money in a savings account to put a down payment on a home. And so, it can turn somebody's situation around that significantly over the course of several years.
That's amazing. Can you, I guess, is your credit frozen while you're participating in these programs, or you still have access to credit? You described someone who was a homeowner by the end of the program, but give me a lay of the land on, kind of the fair play rules there.
Well, there are some fair play rules. And first of all, it doesn't help your situation if you're getting into more debt as you're trying to get out of debt with the accounts that are enrolled. So just as a best practice, it's not a good idea to keep revolving charge accounts open on the side while you're trying to pay down some of the other debts that are in the program. And so it's important to enroll all the revolving charge accounts in the program to pay off that debt. Now, it's acceptable in some circumstances if you need to have an account to cover business travel expenses or things like that. Sure, then you can have one credit card open outside the program. But again, you don't want to give yourself enough room.
You're not maxing for points here.
Yeah.
You're going to have some lifestyle changes or some cash flow changes.
Yeah, there are significant lifestyle changes that need to occur in some cases. But yeah, the breaking that dependence on debt is key to the success of the program. So you want to try to avoid getting back in the same situation you were in before. So enrolling the accounts on the program, the accounts that are enrolled on the program have to be closed. So the creditors will require, as a condition of the program, that the accounts are closed. And in many cases, they already are, because sometimes people enroll in the program at the point where their creditor has already closed the account because it's so far past due.
Yeah.
So a lot of people who are entering the program as they're deep in a financial crisis, that's already the case. But for some, it's not the case. So they just have to know that the accounts are going to be closed in the program, which does cause your credit score to drop a little bit more upon enrollment because the creditor is closing your account. But the rebound in your credit score is significant over time on the program because you're reducing the amount of debt you have. So that means that you're not bumping up as close to your credit limit as you were before. So that's a positive. And once the creditors re-age the accounts, as long as you're making the payments on time, then it will reflect on your credit and you should see a rebound in your credit score. So credit improves over time. But on that initial period of enrollment, because the accounts have to be closed, it can take a little bit of a dip.
Got it. And just mentioning one of the biggest sources of debt nowadays is student loans. Those typically, correct me if I'm wrong, are not able to be part of these types of programs. Is that correct?
That is correct, but many nonprofit credit counseling agencies, especially those that are affiliated with the National Foundation for Credit Counseling, can help you understand your options for affordable student loan repayment.
And integrate that into the overall big picture.
Yes, exactly. Because the credit card debt doesn't live in a vacuum. So you probably not
Right.
only have student loan debt, you have auto loan, you've got
Medical
rent,
bills in some
mortgage, medical
cases.
bills.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some medical bills can be enrolled in the program because that's not
Okay.
collateralized debt. So
Mm-hmm.
the working with care providers across the country, nonprofit credit counseling agencies can put medical bills on a debt management plan in many cases. But for the
Okay.
student loan debt, you can get professional advice, guidance on how to manage that student loan debt, whether it is federally guaranteed student loan debt or whether it's private student loan debt. So you can also get advice there as well.
Makes sense. Now, what are some of the other, well, first of all, you mentioned the DIY strategies. So sometimes I see people, they're carrying credit card debt that inches up. Um, and there are alternative places that you can access funds. One of the things I see as a financial planner are people that receive equity compensation. Sometimes their debt piles up because they have a bigger tax bill because some of that equity comp requires you to pay more taxes. And yet they have this unsold stock, for example, that might have an additional tax bill, but there's access to funds there, and there's also this debt, and it's like, hey, let's talk about using some of those funds to pay off the debt that's being generated from the taxes associated with these funds to begin with. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's not the only case, but there can be some situations where when you look at the balance sheet, you got the options, you just didn't know you could touch them or didn't want to.
Yeah. And again, this goes back to the mindset, the crisis mindset that people can be in when they're getting debt collection calls, when they're seeing that their debt is becoming less manageable and they're
Mm-hmm.
getting concerned. It can lead you to a point where you're overlooking some of the options that are right in front of you
Right.
that you may have. But even when you're able to see clear to those options, it may help to get some guidance as to which are the most suitable for you. Because
Absolutely.
suitability is incredibly important here, especially when you're looking at the assets you have and deciding, okay, can I apply some of these assets to this debt challenge here to resolve that, or is it better to try to resolve it directly with the creditors and leave those assets alone? So that's where it really helps to reach out and get some professional guidance because you're down in the trenches. Sometimes a financial professional is able to take a look from a different perspective and see clear through all the fog in the trenches and help guide you to a point where you're making a better decision for yourself based on suitability.
It's so nice to get a second pair of eyes. I just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to talk about the other, kind of solutions that are out there. So, we talked about sometimes there's a game plan, but you can self implement DIY, the nonprofit credit counselor options. Who else is like reaching out to people under duress who are stressed about debt, looking to provide a solution, whether it's recommended or not?
Yeah, well, I'm sure you don't have to spend more than 15 or 20 minutes flipping channels on your TV to see debt settlement commercials.
Mm-hmm.
These are for-profit companies that are offering to make your debt disappear, which is the way the ad sounds. They'll settle your debt for pennies on the dollar, and they tout extraordinary results. Settling more than half your debt, you can just walk away from it, and they'll tell you that you don't have to pay, you shouldn't pay. But
Sounds too
there's
good to be true. Tell me what we each come in with our own biases, but what actually happens in most cases for those types of situations?
well, in these situations, there's a lot they don't tell you in the ad. The devil is in the details, and the details you don't see on screen in a 60-second ad.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to be careful because this is another instance where suitability is very critical. Sure, you'll probably hear stories of people who succeeded on a debt settlement program, but it's not for everybody. But with these debt settlement companies, they apply the same solution to everybody's problem, no matter how different the problems or circumstances may be. And one size fits all doesn't really fit all.
Okay.
And so if you go into a debt settlement program, you have to understand a couple of things. For-profit debt settlement companies are going to enroll your debt in the program, and they'll enroll debt that's not even behind. It's not even past due. So they'll just
Mm.
put it all in there. And while they're negotiating with the creditors that you owe, as a tactic, they will advise you to stop paying all of your creditors. So no more payments. Don't pay them a penny during the negotiation process, but instead.
So you look uncollectible, which gives them negotiating leverage, but also can harm you in a way that is worse than you started.
Exactly. In theory, it's supposed to reinforce their negotiating position on your behalf, but in reality, it makes your situation exponentially worse.
More dire.
And yeah, and while you're not sending payments to the creditors, you're putting money into a trust account that they've set up so that you're just accumulating money so that once there is a settlement reached, that can be applied towards the settlement amount. And then they're going to start charging you fees. And typically the fees they charge you equal about 30% of the settled debt. So that can be a pretty steep fee if
so 30% of your debt outstanding or 30% of what you end up paying.
It's 30% of the amount that they settle. So if they successfully settle 50% of your debt, then 30% of that is what you're going to owe them in fees.
And when you say successfully settle, so you start with 100,000 of unsecured debt, they negotiate it down to 50,000, and then there's a fee of 30%. So 15,000 is the fee. So you end up paying 65 between what you have to pay to the creditors as well as what you're paying to the settlement consultant.
Yes, that's generally the math there. So, and
then what does your credit look like after that?
Well, there's a couple of things here that can impact that. First of all, it is widely known that debt settlement companies, for-profit debt settlement companies, are not 100% successful in their negotiations. So either they're not going to settle your debt as much as you might have expected, or there may be some accounts where they can't reach a settlement with the creditor at all. So what then happens if you haven't been paying that creditor for 6 or 7 months or 8 months or longer? The creditor is going to get a little impatient. And so they're going to escalate the account collection activity, and they could even sue you for the debt that you owe. So you've torpedoed your credit. There's nothing good that's going to come out of this at the end when it comes to your credit report, and you look at what happens when you're not paying. But even worse, you could put yourself in a very vulnerable position with your creditors because they may just turn around and sue you. And with some of the for-profit debt settlement companies, they have people sign limited power of attorney at the beginning because they're going to be negotiating on behalf of the consumer. So they need access to the accounts. But what they're also doing is preventing you from receiving communication directly from the creditor. So all the while, you don't have any indication of how much worse your situation is getting as you're going through the negotiation process. So it's a really rough process, not always successful, and it can be very costly.
And so I would assume if you were contemplating that option, that you would also be that the nonprofit credit counselors would be available to provide a second opinion, perhaps, if you haven't signed on the bottom line.
Yeah, I think another way to look at that is if you have a nonprofit credit counseling option and you know that the initial assessment is free and there's no cost, and they're going to look at your entire financial situation, and they're going to give you an action plan that presents all of the options and explains the options, including debt settlement, but also options like bankruptcy and other things that you might be considering. Then you can make an informed choice for yourself and put yourself in a better situation. So yes, maybe you're in such a dire situation that all the wreckage that could potentially be caused by the settlement process doesn't seem as bad because you're already at the point of no return. So yeah, maybe settlement could work. But if you're not that far down the line with debt collection and pending creditor lawsuits, maybe you should consider a different option. So that's your opportunity with that initial assessment to take a step back, look at all your options, ask questions from a financial expert to help you understand them more clearly, and then make the decision. Makes
sense. And then in some cases, is bankruptcy a reasonable or perhaps a decision that a credit counselor might endorse for some certain people?
Well, it's certainly a decision that a credit counselor will help people understand more clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, the individual, the consumer, has to make that choice for themselves.
Makes sense.
But nonprofit credit counseling is actually a required step in filing personal bankruptcy. If you're filing Chapter 7 or Chapter 13, if you go to a bankruptcy attorney, they're going to send you back to a nonprofit credit counseling agency for that extra step
Got it.
to help you better understand bankruptcy and explore alternatives if those exist. And if they don't exist, then you just go right back to the bankruptcy attorney with your certificate from the counseling session, and you can proceed with filing.
Makes sense. And we've had a bankruptcy attorney on the podcast in the past. All options are something that probably should be considered. And there may be some cases where someone decides that bankruptcy is the right route. So, not to diminish that possibility at all.
Yeah, so there's certainly cases where it is a suitable option in some circumstances. So the counselors understand that, they recognize that, and they can help an individual, more clearly understand the bankruptcy process before they go through the next steps, if that is the case. So the counselor is going to be supportive, whatever the individual decides might be the most suitable route.
Are there any other underappreciated or, kind of less known tactics that might be useful for people to be aware of that credit counselors utilize?
That's a really good question. Apart from, well, when you enter into the initial assessment process, the counselor is looking at your unique circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like going out to a blog and getting one size fits all advice on how to manage a budget.
Or a podcast, right?
or a podcast. Yeah. So it's one-on-one coaching that takes place in that. So there's a lot of really good advice that can apply to a person's individual circumstances, unique circumstances, that can be shared in the course of that assessment. And it's all confidential. So these sessions take place one-on-one. They're confidential. So you can get some really good advice based on your unique circumstances in how to manage the debt that you have in front of you. And there could be circumstances where an individual might not be at a point where their credit has taken a hit, but they feel the financial pressure. So there may be some tactics that can be used to, I guess, reshuffle the debt a little bit creatively.
Like a balance transfer or something like that. Often with a fee, but then there's a relief period where you kind of have a period of time with lower payment or lower interest to try to catch up or get things under control.
If there's an introductory offer of 0% or a reduced interest rate that takes a little bit of the interest rate pressure off, and if it is affordable, a counselor can help somebody put together a plan to pay off the debt during that that teaser rate period to get the most out of it. And in some cases that can happen. There can also be very complicated circumstances. I used to work with a lot of couples that were divorced but wanted to go into a program to untangle some of the debt obligations they had, but work out an affordable repayment plan.
Yeah, and a lot of times the debt accumulated in marriage, even if it's only accumulated on, his or his, like one side of the aisle, gets divvied up between the two of you at the point in time that you mediate a divorce or settle on a divorce. Yeah,
so those situations can be very tricky, and it's always good to have a financial professional who can maybe help out a little bit. So in situations where debt is unmanageable on both sides of the equation, nonprofit credit counseling can be a tremendous help there as well. So there are a lot of unique situations, challenging situations where you can benefit from talking to a nonprofit credit counselor.
It's so helpful, Bruce. For those of us for our listeners who are either thinking, gosh, this episode, I feel the anxiety, I feel the stress of debt and want to have deeper conversations. First of all, I'm so glad that people know, based on this episode, about the work that nonprofit credit counselors do. Also, this is, part of the discussions that financial planners have every day as well. But where can people get started to find a nonprofit credit counselor? And, determine that they're not, for-profit debt negotiators?
Yeah, the first stop can be the National Foundation for Credit Counseling website, nfcc.org.
Okay.
All of the credit counseling agencies that are part of the NFCC network are nonprofit. These are nonprofit organizations. So if you find an agency by connecting through the National Foundation for Credit Counseling website, nfcc.org, you are guaranteed that agency is a nonprofit agency, and they'll be able to help you with a wide range of issues. And when you go to the NFCC website, if you go to nfcc.org and you connect to a counselor, you can indicate what type of help you need. Maybe you need help with a budget. Maybe you need help dealing with debt issues with credit cards, or maybe you need to avoid foreclosure, or maybe you're struggling with student loan debt. So there are all kinds of different things that you can address. Yeah, when you're connecting with a counselor through the NFCC website. So nfcc.org. There's also a toll-free number, 1-800-388-2227. So if you'd rather talk to a counselor by phone, you can do that too. And I would emphasize, in this age of AI, you're talking to real people. These are real human being financial experts who can help you with your problem. So you're not dealing with AI, you're not dealing with a bot. We'll connect you with real people who can help you with your real life problems.
Yeah, I think that, in an age where I see a lot of value to AI in terms of personal finance, it's also important to remember that the experiences and at-bats for your own personal situation is much more complex than the typical bot can deal with nowadays. And there's also something that is so important in the work that you do, Bruce, or your credit counselors do, as well as the work that I do, which is that it's not just the dollars and cents. It's also your mindset, your approach to money, affirmations of positive, kind of behaviors or habits, as well as work together to acknowledge where there may be weaknesses or vulnerabilities that need to be addressed. And that psychology is, you can get some of the way there on a chat, but I think to address the level of complexity in a way that is kosher, I would strongly encourage people to not just use a chat to address your issues, but also seek human advice.
Yes, that is good advice. And there, just from practical experience as a counselor, knowing that there are all kinds of different nuances and things that, a AI bot or a chat won't factor when rendering solutions. And it's not quite at the point where the bot's going to be able to navigate that to get you to exactly the right point you need to be. So I think it's very important to talk to a human being who can empathize, who can provide advice, and who can and do that in an environment where it's safe for you to share and you're not being judged.
Yeah, makes so much sense. Well, Bruce, thank you so much for joining the conversation. I really appreciated it. And I know there are people out there that are going to appreciate the resources that you've shared as well. So
thanks so much for having me on the podcast, Melissa.
Thank you for listening to the Women's Money Wisdom podcast. If you found value in this episode, the best way that you can support the podcast is to forward an episode to a friend or leave a review. Go to proplan.com and the podcast link to get all the resources and links mentioned. This presentation by Pearl Planning is intended for general information purposes only. No portion of this presentation serves as the receipt of or a substitute for personal investment advice from Pearl Planning or any other investment professional of your choosing. Copies of Pearl Planning's current written disclosure brochure and Form CRS discussing our advisory services and fees are available upon request or on our website platform at pearlplan.com. The information that we share is meant to educate and inspire, not serve as personalized financial advice. Everyone's situation is unique, so be sure to consult with your own financial professional for guidance that fits your life. And just so you know, the opinions shared in this podcast are Melissa's own and those of her guests. They don't necessarily represent any organizations with which Melissa is affiliated. For more important disclosures, please go to our webpage at pearlplan.com.